Hello, 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 and happy St. Paddy's Day. Just let me know you can all hear me okay, you can all see me okay. Let me see if everybody's coming on. I can see Sue here, Sherry's here, Kathy B's here, Derek's here, C. Blessed, Sir Pierce DeVille, Jan is here, our Whisperer, uh, Kelly Schultz, Gail, Bubba News. Hiya, Bubba. Bubba is on with us tomorrow as well. Joanne is here, Asset Ministries. God bless. God bless us. Everyone is here. And guys, as you're coming on, make sure you're saying hello. Make sure you're saying where you're coming in from. As you can see, I'm not in my office tonight. I'm in a hotel. Um, it is St. Patrick's Day, and we live in. So where we live is in County Down, and that's where, so County Down, certainly when we go to Downpatrick, the Hill of Down, that is where St. Patrick was buried. That's where he ended his life. But my wife and I are at the minute are in Armagh, and this is where he established his first church and all of this sort of thing. So we're actually away from my wife's birthday, and it coincidentally is also St. Patrick's Day. So, guys, is the sound okay? Let me know the sound's okay. Just hit one if it's okay. We've got Lisa here. Deborah's here. So, we're going to talk a little bit about St. Patrick's Day and St. Patrick himself, but we're going to talk about it in probably a way that a lot of people um, don't really look into, because quite often, if you can look at it, St. Patrick's Day is now it's secularized. There was a big parade through the town centre today, both in Belfast and in Armagh, and around the world. But it's secularized. It's often associated with getting drunk. It's associated with partying, but it's not really what it's about, and it's not really what he was about. Um, and it's also not really what the mythology around St. Patrick is about, because quite often the stories that you hear have a deeper meaning and are allegorized in mythology to paint a picture, and it's an overarching picture of a spiritual battle that was going on, but um, it's not really quite often what we know about him. It's not really, certainly what most people know about him. It's not really a historical account on all settings, and depending on who you ask, you could talk to anybody in Ireland, and one side of the community could see St. Patrick as um, kind of colonialized, or a picture of colonial or of colonization, in the terms of um, Ireland was very much largely a pagan society. And we'll get into this, and we'll get into Tuatha today. We'll get into the God tribe, demonic tribe. We'll get into the demonic element surrounding it, and certainly the pagan culture. But where St. Patrick comes into this, and where we get a lot of the history from, a lot of the stuff, and we'll talk about specifically a few of the stories, which I think paint an overarching picture of, I believe, the life mission of St. Patrick. Um, in terms of, I believe he had a specific mission from God, and on a surface level, it is to baptize and convert an awful lot of Irish people to Christianity or to Catholicism. But it goes deeper than that. It goes much deeper than that. And I think it goes back to cosmic geography. It goes back to the Tuatha Dé. It goes back to the God tribe. It goes back to Genesis 11, Genesis 6. It goes to all of that and the Deuteronomy 32, verse 8 world view. So is everybody following with me before we get started? Let me just double check my comments here. Um, so everybody's following. If you can, do me a favor. I know, like I've said before, Monday's not our usual night, but sometimes we'll jump on a Monday. And this week we have David. We have Bubba News on tomorrow, and then we have John Haller on Wednesday. So we've got a lot happening this week. But as it happens, I'm in a hotel room, so I don't have my usual camera. I'm just working off the laptop sort of camera here. Um, so hopefully we can get into some stuff here. So to look at what we're talking about, it's to understand, everybody knows, I think everybody knows, St. Patrick wasn't Irish. In fairness, most of those who worked in an apostolic form weren't local to the place that they were sent because of the term apostolic. They operated under an apostolic mission. Certainly, St. Patrick did. You could say St. George did for England as well, but again, he wasn't English. So, St. Patrick, there's kind of a debate as to. I think he leans to being Welsh more than anything. If you take his name was Maewyn Succat. That's his original name, and it describes the lad or the servant lad who herded swine. Now that's interestingly enough what he ended up doing in Ireland, but there's a belief he's either Welsh or Scottish. I think it leans more to the Welsh element because there's more history behind that, and also if you look at this, Ireland, certainly Ireland, France, Scotland, and Wales all have similar Celtic mythology and history around the countries, and in my argument, most of that comes out of Ireland. Most of that comes out of Ireland, but certainly there's a real similarity between the Irish and the Welsh. I guess Celtic deities, Celtic history, Celtic mythology around this, and it's important to understand that because we know at 16, Maewyn was captured by Irish pirates, so to speak, and brought to the land, brought to here, brought to the country, and he then ended up working as a herder or a shepherd for pigs, for a pig farmer. God spoke to him through a vision, and he was shown how he would escape. And when he escaped, he got on a ship and he went to France. It was there in France that he had his monastic sort of priestly training. And as he was trained there, now listen, we can think of this. I've even heard the argument that some people will say St. Patrick was Protestant and not Catholic. I've heard that argument, which is ludicrous because, to be perfectly honest, there was no Protestant church back then. The reason a lot of people say that is because St. Patrick, there's evidence to say he was married and all and had kids and stuff. But then the Catholic priest wasn't required to be celibate until about 1193 AD, something like that. That was when that, excuse me, that was when that was enacted. So he wasn't required to be celibate. That was a later addition to the Catholic Church. Now, at this point, like all of the church is universalistic. All of the church is of the Roman Catholic sort of mandate, and it's important to understand that there's differences now compared to then about how the church was operating. Because even when you go back to things like the Council of Nicaea and these great Christian leaders, they were still under the umbrella of Catholicism there. But Catholicism and dispensationalism, and I'm going off on tangents, I'm really sorry. It operates under the age of Thyatira. It becomes wicked and wicked and wicked and wicked, right? So that's what we see in terms of the dispensational age. It's a different universal church to universal church now. Anyway, so he learns his faith, learns the word, and then he receives a vision, another vision. And in this vision, he sees a letter, and the letter is headed by an individual called Victoricus. And Victoricus is writing to him in this vision saying, "The voice of the Irish is calling you." That was the belief that the Irish people, the pagan Irish, were beseeching him to walk, this holy lad, that's what he's termed in this letter, to walk once more amongst them. Now, this is where it gets interesting. And we believe that Maewyn or Patrick, because he was named St. Patrick after by Pope Celestine, right? He was named St. Patrick by him, and then which means father of the people. We believe he came back when he was about 60. So it shows you that you're never too old to start your ministry. Like Moses started his ministry at 80, um, St. Patrick at 60. But what we see coming into the play here is so much in regards to who he was and what he operated as, but it's not really the plain old story that you see. And it's not what is celebrated in terms of St. Paddy's Day parades or people drinking green drinks or dressing in green or um, going out and getting bladdered because they believe that's what it represents. It doesn't represent any of that. St. Patrick was someone that in his faith had a desire to know God. And actually, we can see through ancient writings that he did have that desire and he was very humble in who he was. We don't believe he was from the upper class, but we do believe that his dad was a British Roman soldier. So he was a local soldier, but a Roman citizen. And in that way, he would have had some education, and his education would allow him to write and correspond and different things. But at the same time, it wasn't. It wasn't of the same approach that some historians have thought. Some historians have equated Patrick to Politis, right? This um, bishop who was sent to Ireland by the Pope, but they're different people. They're different people entirely. And in fact, the writings sort of portray that because Patrick was very humble, and even later historians have noted that his humility, they believed, was equivalent to his social status or social station. I believe it's equivalent to the fact that he knew the Lord, and his writings show that he craved to know the Lord and know Him intimately. And he was sent back to Ireland, and we know the story. He goes about and he baptizes, and the old myth that he chases the snakes out of Ireland. There were no snakes in Ireland, right? I think the closest you would get is like a grass snake. There was no real snakes in Ireland. It is what the snakes represent. And I was reading, someone put up a post today on Facebook, and it was an individual who kind of holds to the new age, or let me say the old age Celtic ways and Celtic cult ways, and they believe that Ireland was colonialized initially by the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church took away the gods of Ireland, and it's a load of nonsense. But this is a growing belief again, and they said that, which is, there's part of it that's right. They said that the snakes in this sense that St. Patrick chased out were the Druids' form of worship, and there's a whole load of tales behind this that don't make factual sense, but you can see the allegorical spiritual principle behind them. So, for instance, right, there's this story that St. Patrick stood on the hill of Tara, and the Hill of Tara is a hill in Drogheda. And you have this hill is synonymous with Samhain, Halloween, and it's synonymous with uh, making kings. So the chieftains would be anointed there, and you had the king part, and then you have the mound of hostages, and all of this on this mound. It was integral to the chieftain druid system in Ireland. And the story goes that Patrick took the Bible, and he came up, and I'll tell you why this is not factual, but it has a spiritual point behind it. He took up and he confronted the Druids, a little bit like how Elijah does at Mount Carmel, right? He confronts the worshippers of Baal. And I'll show you all of this is so intrinsically linked to the Bible. Okay. Remember that Ireland does not have a book of creation. We have a book of invasions. And the earliest source in the book of invasions tells of supposedly Noah's granddaughter constructing a ship, a vessel of her own, because she was not allowed on the ark. Now, this is myth. This is, we can't attribute this to history, but this shows you where sort of the mentality comes from, and brought a group of people and settled here post flood. And like I said, we don't have a book of creation, we have a book of invasion. So a lot of the stories you will start to see have either what I call a Nephilistic news cycle. In other words, biblical news stream, but of a counter approach, right? So remember the Watchers, their story is continued by their offspring, the Nephilim. When the Nephilim are wiped out in the flood, the people continue to worship. We know they worship the Rephaim, the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. And we know that that continues, and that news cycle is everywhere. So this story goes at the Hill of Tara that Patrick confronted the Druid leaders, these pagan worshippers, and he says, look, we're going to, whoever's book floats and does not sink, that is the true form of worship. So he had them throw their Druid books in to the water, into this big barrel, and they all sank. He threw the Bible in, and it floated. Now, it's not true. And what the reason we know it's not true historically is because there was no writing here, no formalized writing until the 7th century in Ireland. So St. Patrick was born, we think, around 373 AD. Some people believe he lived for 87 years. There is a theory that he lived for 111 years, which I believe is another allegorical impression put upon his life to try and turn people to away from paganism and back to Christian, or not back to Christianity, to the one way through Jesus. Why? Because the number 111 is synonymous with Jesus, it is synonymous with faith, and it is synonymous with being someone of faith, right? Hebrews 11, verse 1. In fact, Hebrews 11 is known as the Hall of Faith in the Bible, but Hebrews 11, verse 1, that without faith it is impossible to please God. So I believe that in itself is even an allegorical sort of finger pointing to say, look, his whole life has been summarized and symbolized as a way of allegorizing spiritual warfare. Okay, so hopefully this is making sense. Let me just check if people are getting this right. So hopefully you're getting something. Hopefully this is making sense because there's so many stories, and some of the stories you've got to really dig into because when you talk about the Tuatha Dé, right? So the Tuatha Dé Dan is the full title, but because they believe that they are off the goddess Danu. But that is a later edition. I remember the guy who's in charge of Mythical Ireland. He took us on tours, a fantastic tour guide called Anthony Murphy, and he was saying that he believes that the Danu was the later edition. But the Tuatha Dé, right, the Tuatha Dé are the God tribe in Ireland. They are akin in more ways than one to the Genesis 6 Watchers, to the Book of Enoch Watchers, right? These are the God tribe. There's also a giant tribe called the Fomorians, and all of this goes right through Irish culture. Now, this is really important to understand because when you start to see the mythology and the deities worshipped in Ireland, you can see why the name and the story of St. Patrick, which is a true story, has been allegorized in so many ways to symbolize the victory in spiritual warfare that is found in Christ. Okay? So honestly, like, there's so much to this, right? Um, in fact, let me throw this up. I want to show you this. This is the Rake. It's a mountain, okay? So this is the Rake. It is also Croach Patrick, right? Or it used to be called Croach Agal, right? The Agal means eagle, and it's talking the summit. Now you can see it's a pyramid type shape. Now the reason I'm showing you this is because to this day, that is a place in which there is a pilgrimage on March 17th, the date of St. Patrick's death, up that mountain. There's a pilgrimage up that mountain. And there's a pilgrimage to the church on the summit. And they do that on March 17th because the story goes that St. Patrick went up that mountain, fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and then came down and dealt with the serpents. And remember, the serpents are not the serpents are the Druids. The serpent culture was certainly worshipped by the Druids. In fact, Kunanos or Sarunanos, depending on who you call him, is the oldest Irish deity, the oldest Celtic deity, is also called the horned deity, and in some iconography, he was also associated with the Druid worship. So when Patrick comes down, he takes care of this. But there's deeper meaning to this. Am I back? I disappeared there. Unfortunately, one of the things that I realized, let me just remove that. One of the things that I realized is that we're staying in this hotel today, and with it being St. Patrick's Day, it is absolutely hiving, right? You hear people from next door. The hotel is hiving, it is completely full, and so the internet is being drained, or the Wi-Fi capability. But this place, the Rake, okay, like I said, it is now a place of pilgrimage to St. Patrick. But previous to St. Patrick, for 3,000 years, it was a place of pilgrimage to an Irish deity. Now, this is why St. Patrick was certainly used by God, and his life has been allegorized in such a heavy form. When you understand who this deity that they had a pilgrimage for, right, every year to this mountain, when you understand who it was, then it sort of opens your eyes. So there's an Irish deity called Luch. Now, Luch is his name literally means light. Okay, to give you an idea of him, in fact, there's some who have likened Luch to Hermes or Mercury or Thoth in Egyptian culture, and he was seen as this light bearer. This, let me see if I can get a picture of him here. I'll bring him up in a minute. Actually, he was seen as this light bearer. Now you can already sort of gather where I'm going with this. So Luch is this individual who comes along and he shines, right? And he's part of the Tuatha Day, right? But he is actually a mix between that and the giant race, right? And he leads the Tuatha in defeating the Fomorians, defeating the giants, right? And he is seen as this hero to the Irish culture. He's also seen as someone who comes along and trades. And what does Ezekiel 28 verse 16 says? When it's talking about some individual also associated with light, it says that he had an abundance of trade in his heart. Now, Luch is associated with quite a lot of things. In fact, the Hill of Tara, which I just talked about, this place, I've been there. It's fantastic. Like it's like the our megaliths here are older than the pyramids, and some of them are immaculately kept. And when you see the history behind this, the Hill of Tara was synonymous with the birth of Samhain, as was Onagat, the Cave of Hell, which I've been to and been down and prayed over. The Gates of Hell, it's called. They're both synonymous with Samhain. Samhain, the birth or the originator of Halloween, right? Now, Luch is believed on Samhain Eve, right? Halloween, to light up the Hill of Tara. In other words, the sun comes in and lights up the Hill of Tara where the mound of hostages is, and lights that up. And this is seen as the arrival of Luch, the arrival of the what they see as the glorious deity, right? Now, this mountain, the Reek, Crocagal, this mountain was associated for pilgrimage for Luch every year. In fact, you have Lunasa, the festival of Luch, right? So, whenever you get to the last Sunday in July, you would have had this festival of Luch. Now, if you don't know, it sounds like I'm coughing here. It's Lugh. If you're thinking his accent's already hard to understand and now he's speaking weird, it's Lugh is the deity that I'm talking about, and he is he is associated, right, with light. He is associated with so much, right? So Lunasa is his festival, and Lunasa happens on the last Sunday of July. And this festival is also associated, in fact, that same day is associated with another individual or another, let's say, deity of sorts, right? And he is called a crumb dove. Now, Luck is a Celtic god associated with harvest and light, right? And I believe he's associated with harvest and light, as is Lucifer, right? Lucifer is associated as the light bearer. He was also one that would ancient cultures would trade with in terms to have a good harvest. Um, he is considered the same as Crom Dove. Now, Crom Dove or Crom Corach is a figure that represents crooked darkness. He is known as a fertility figure, and under the Christianization or the Christian sort of uh, Christianizing of Ireland, he is associated with Hasatan. He is associated with the devil. Now remember, even in the Bible, Lucifer and Hasatan, the Satan, is a job description. Lucifer is talking about the light bearing angel or covering cherub in Ezekiel 28 who falls, right? So the job description is Hasatan, and the individual is this light bearer. And if you look at that picture again, and you look at the bottom right, this is the picture that artists have ascribed to Luch. Now, the above picture, above that, is associated with Crom Dove in that form, right? The crooked darkness. And the one on the left, that also is associated with Crom Dove. Now, the story goes, telling you a little bit, he's ready for some storytelling, Irish storytelling. Um, Story goes that there was an individual, let me see if I put it down for you, King Tirganus, or Tigernus, King Tigernus, um, wanted a good harvest, right? People were hungry. He wanted a good harvest. And the way it happened under pagan Druid run Ireland is that you made a sacrifice to get a good harvest, and you made a sacrifice to Crom Dove, which is the twisted form of Luch, like Hasatan is the job description for Lucifer. All of this making sense? Um, so Crom Dove uh, keeps his end of the bargain. He gives King Terganus a great harvest, but something happens in the interim. St. Patrick comes on the scene. So St. Patrick comes on the scene, and people are starting to get baptized. And King Tirganus hears about a god that can be served without human sacrifice. Okay, so to serve Luch or to serve Crom Dove, you had to sacrifice humans. Quite often, it was done in the form of children. This is something that we get around Samhain, around Halloween, that we get the sacrifice of children, and it's all sort of I guess, watered down under the idea of trick or treating. Trick or treating comes from the idea that the Fomorians, the giant race, would come on the scene on Samhain Eve, and how you would appease them from taking your children is to leave uh, oats and milk and stuff out for them, and that would be the trick or treating sort of start of that. Now, whenever you go past this, is anybody getting anything from this? I'm not boring you with the Irish history, Irish mythology around this. I think the Crom Dove stuff is really, really interesting. So King Terganus makes this deal with Crom Dove. He makes a deal with the devil. He makes a deal with the deity Luch. Now Luch was, like I said, pilgrimage. The whole country would have a pilgrimage to him every year on the Rake on the mountain. And now with St. Patrick, they would have a pilgrimage for St. Patrick instead. And it's kind of that switcheroo that happens with the life of St. Patrick. It's a picture of spiritual warfare. Um, so whenever you see this, it's it's a picture of not making a deal with the devil, but also understanding the replacement that comes with Christianity, that no longer were false evil deities able to require of the Irish people a human sacrifice, because they would sacrifice children like the Israelites would sacrifice to Moloch. And instead, they had a God who was the sacrifice, is the sacrifice to each and every one of us. So hopefully this is starting to make a little bit of sense. So this is the story, right? King Tyrannus decides, no, I'm not having it. I've made a deal with the devil. I've made a deal with Crumdove. I've made a deal with Luck to have a good harvest. Luck, give him a good harvest. But he won't serve Luck. He won't. He wanted 200 souls, 200 people sacrificed, and he refused to do it because he had found out about God. He had found out about Jesus through St. Patrick. And therefore, the devil, Crumduch, decides to send a soul collector. This is the Irish myth. This is around Samhain as well. This is around Halloween. Uh, the Dulhallan. Now, the Dulhallan is what most people will know through movies and through their culture, that, and it comes from here, is the headless horseman. It is a black horse, right? Now, that is sent out to collect 200 souls for Crumdove, for the devil, for Luch, this Tuate, this Irish version of Lucifer, right? And that to me is a picture of what we see within the Bible. So when you look at the Bible, you see that in Zechariah 1 about black and red and white horses. Zechariah 6 talks about the black, the red, the white, and the pale. Revelation 6 talks about the same. Now, if you look at this, I done a talk about this at our conference and explained how each one of those are actually Canaanite deities, and they're mentioned continually through the Bible. So Habakkuk talks about the deity Reseph. Reseph is known as the god of the horses, or the god of steeds, but he is also known as someone who carried a bow on top of a white horse. He is known as someone who goes out conquering and to conquer, aka the white horse of Revelation. The black horse of Revelation is associated with Fahad. Fahad is this Canaanite deity that is synonymous with terror, right? And he's also associated with trade. Okay, hence the scales of the black horse and the black rider. So what you see in response from the arrival of St. Patrick and people being brought into the faith is the pagan world now stepping away from the druid led mythology that is not just made up, has come from the Bible, has come from the Nephilistic news cycle, has come from the teachings of the Watchers and the fallen angels that come through the Nephilim, that from the Nephilim spread out through those who worship the Nephilim. Because we know that, like at Gilgal Rephaim, that people were worshipping giant individuals. They were worshipping watchers. We know that they worshipped watchers on Mount Hermon, Azazel and Shemiezah. They worshipped these, and as they worshipped them, they started to worship them for the sake of receiving something. We know that Azazel taught man to war, taught women how to adorn themselves with makeup, taught magic, all of those things. And this is the same that we see through this deity, Lugh, Luch, right? And this deity is also synonymously attached to Crum Dove. In fact, Lunasa is the exact same day as Crum Dove Sunday. It's the exact same day. It's the day of trading souls, right? And again, associated with Samhain, associated with Halloween. Why? Because no matter if anybody is on here and they think Halloween is harmless, honestly, I've done talks with this on everybody's channel that I can think of. I don't want on LA Marzuli's channel. I don't want on somebody else. I've talked about this. It is not a harmless holiday. Its roots are not just pagan, its roots are Luciferian. Its roots are Nephilistic. Its roots are in the fallen, and it is all about serving the fallen. And one of the things that you've seen in Ireland recently is this resurgence towards what everybody calls New Ageism, but it's kind of a return to old ways, because Luch was worshipped here 3,000 years before St. Patrick comes on the scene, right? So 3,000 years of worship of this false deity that can be synonymously, in my opinion, attached, and others, attached to Lucifer. And then you see that God sends a vision through an individual called Victoricus, whose name means victory, being established. He sends a vision to Patrick, the father of the people, to come to the land of the pagans, to come to the land of this deep, deep Irish Celtic culture that permeates all the way through. And I believe Patrick had an understanding of this because the Welsh culture also was synonymously attached to the Irish Celtic roots. In fact, there's a story called Mabon. Mabon is on the pagan wheel cycle. And in the pagan wheel cycle, Mabon is this, there's a story connected with it, and it led Julius Caesar to establish that Mabon represented Apollo, okay, or Apollyon. Apollo or Apollyon is also ascribed to Luch because they're both sun deities. Now, the story of Mabon is that there's these two lovers called Ulrin and Coleridge, and they want to marry, and they're given this druidic assignment, this assignment from the druids, and the assignment is to go down into this deep, deep cavern, into the abyss, and let free Mabon, Apollyon. Revelation 9. Do you understand how? So what I'm saying is that like my wife asked me earlier because she said you wrote about the Nephilistic news cycle, you talk about it all the time, but she still wasn't sure what I'm saying. Well, the truth of it is there is one truth, and the truth is the Word of God, right? The truth is the Word of God. That is the unbreakable, infallible Word of God. But what has been the plan of the enemy from the very start is to corrupt the Word. Go back to the Garden of Eden. What happens is that they're told not to touch or not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But then a corruption comes in through the Nahish, the serpent, and Eve even gets the twisting in her head of what was said. She says, lest we touch it or eat it. So she found out when she touched it, she didn't die. But when she ate it, then her eyes were opened. So what I'm saying is it's the corruption of the word that the enemy tries to bring in. And that is the news cycle that has went through everywhere and to every nation. In fact, over here, and like I said, that Facebook post that I saw earlier, the individual was writing up, and they were writing that they were furious at Christianity, furious at St. Patrick for colonizing us and taking away the deities that they worshipped, right? And she was talking about the megaliths. Now she's factual on certain elements, but her perspective is so off the chart crazy, and it's rooted in what can only be described as Luciferianism. Now, Luciferianism doesn't mean that you walk around with horns on. It means that you're serving. Helen Blavatsky was a Luciferianist. She believed that he was the light, the one who revealed knowledge to man, and therefore she served him. This is the agenda of the enemy. Now, one of the things that this lady was talking about was something that I've talked about before. The megalithic structures here. Now, Ireland is full of them. In the occult New Age world, they're seen as sources of huge power and energy. And their ley lines, they believe ley lines go to these sort of, megalithic structures like Brunaboyne or Fort Fornox and all of these. And what's interesting, I went to the Boyne Valley, and in the Boyne Valley, there's loads of these. You could throw a stone and you're hitting a megalithic structure, but they're all uniquely lined up. And I was telling Troy about this. They're all uniquely lined up with each other. And then from being lined up with each other, they're lined up with Cygnus, the constellation in the stars, which is specifically the Northern Cross. And they're lined up that way. And they believe that these megalithic structures are sources of power. My belief is this is like maybe talking in a spiritual sense. The enemy's not omnipresent, not omniscient, not omnipotent. So if he sets doorways, windows around the world where evil can be concentrated, that whenever the community, whenever the population start to turn away from God and turn themselves onto pagan ways, then it gives access for these doors to kind of be opened. Does this make sense? I don't want to go too deep, but I'm just trying to give you some stories. One of the other stories that I think is interesting because it's got its biblical connotation on this. Right, I keep dropping off and am I back? Am I back? Well, I'll just keep talking anyway. So in Douth, the story is that this sister wanted her brother to win this battle. So she prayed to the Tuatha Dé. She prayed to the God tribe, and they made the sun stand still. Joshua 10. Right? It is the mimicry, it is capturing and taking from the Bible and twisting the narrative. Does this make sense? Guys, let me know I haven't lost you here. Let me know what this is making sense because I want to talk about the oil feist. The oil feist is, let me just throw up some pictures for you. The oil feist is this serpent. Now, the serpent beast, um, the oil feist, is developed from a worm after this sort of big battle. And this is the picture. It's a chaos demon. So it's known as being, in some pictures, it's a seven-headed serpent, right? That comes out of the waters. Now, the story goes that St. Patrick stood against this, and this is how the River Shannon was created. It's also, it ended up in Loch Derg, which is like red water because it was defeated by St. Patrick. Now, here's the thing: St. Patrick didn't do that. But what this is it's taking biblical truth and trying to supplant it upon the Nephilistic news cycle, the lies of the enemy, to highlight the spiritual war and certainly the spiritual significance of Ireland. Listen, Ireland can be discounted for so many reasons. One, that it's small. Two, that everybody equates the Irish with being drunkards and fighters and all of this. But the truth of it, right? So many great theologians have come out of Ireland. So many people who have actually changed territories. So many spiritual warriors have been raised out of this land. And I believe that that continues from the example that St. Patrick gave in this land, that he stood against a druidistic, Nephilistic, evil pagan approach of child sacrifice, of um, of false deity worship, of Samhain, the evil encounters of Halloween that honestly, like I said, are Luciferian. And he stood against all of that. And then we get people like Leonard Ravenhill, we get people like C.S. Lewis, we get so many people coming out of this. Or modern days, you've got John Lennox, you've got people like that who come out of this land who are a voice of God. And I believe that Ireland is a representation, like a testing ground for some, uh, I guess, geographical spiritual warfare. And it all comes back to cosmic geography. The enemy looks for a place to be his stronghold. Remember in Deuteronomy 32, verse 8, that the Benehal Elohim, the sons of God, are given dominion over the borders of men. Now, if you read your Bible, you might find that it doesn't say that; it says sons of Seth, but that is an incorrect translation. That's an addition to try and desupernaturalize the Bible. And what you see in that is this is where Israel was called out to be God's people, and the rest of the nations will feature judgment along with the Great Tribulation in through Isaiah 34. Ireland, I believe, has a specific role, and Ireland currently, if we take it in its whole, is failing that role. It is failing that role because it has turned its back on Israel, it's turned its back on God, it's turned its back on Christianity, and it's turning back to its New Age or Old Age roots. Back to Loch worship, back to Lucifer worship. This is where the children of God come in because we're one can chase 1,000, two can chase 10,000, 1,000 fall at one side, 10,000 at your right hand. We can walk with God against the tide and the stream of darkness in this world. So the story of the Olifast is synonymous with the chaos beast. So in the Bible, it talks about Leviathan, a seven-headed chaos beast. In Revelation 12, we have a seven-headed chaos beast in the form of the dragon, aka the devil. In Revelation 13, we have a seven-headed chaos beast coming out of the sea, associated with the Antichrist, aka the devil's man on earth. And what happens here is St. Patrick, who's the symbol of Christianity coming to the land, defeats the Alphist, the seven-headed chaos serpent. Now, this isn't just in the Bible. This is in every ancient culture. You could talk about Tiamat being defeated by Marduk in Babylonian culture. You could go through most of them, and you'll find that there's this kind of beast system, chaos beast, associated with the chaos of the sea that is defeated. And in the life of Patrick, it's not a case of him doing all these exploits in terms of him um, throwing a Bible and seeing it float, right? Against Druid books. There were no Druid books. It is a case of showing that the Bible is higher than any worldly Hermes Trismegistus, Thoth type um, Luch type knowledge, worldly knowledge. That James 3:16 calls it essential demonic wisdom, not the wisdom from God. That the Bible's higher. When he defeats the serpents, it's not him dealing with actual serpents. It's him dealing with the demonically possessed and demonically infested. Listen, people like to joke about the things, right? And like to say, "Oh, a leprechaun, isn't that funny?" And all of this. Am I still on? I can't see any of my comments. Okay, guys, am I still on or am I talking to myself here? Um, my comments seem to have frozen. Hold on. Let me see if I'm on. Guys, if someone could comment. Oh no, if I've been talking away to myself and I'm not on. Guys, oh no, I'm on. Okay, I just can't see my comments. I can see them on the phone now. Okay, apologies. And I can't see, not my counter's not moving, my comments aren't moving. But even when you talk about things like leprechauns, people think that, oh, well, isn't that a wee funny thing? And we'll associate that with Ireland. Do you understand what they represent? They represent the leprechaun were she. She were people of the mind, right? The mind or the she, like a fairy mind, right, are not something quaint. The fairy are the Tuath de Day. They are the tribe that go between here and Tirnanog, the other world, the world of everlasting, and basically they just go back and forth. They're spur beings. The Tuatha today represent the Watchers. The leprechauns represent these small demonic, because that's what they are, small demonic protectors of the she of the uh, fairy folk or Tuatha, off their mind. They represent the protectors. They're not this wee people with a pot of gold at the end. No, they're demons. They're demons. And all of this culture is synonymous because the deities that they worshipped, certainly ingrained in Ireland for thousands of years, can only be traced, in my opinion. And I know that there are people in the New Age Society that will hate what I'm saying right now, but that's okay because I'm not New Age. I'm Christian, and I'm telling you what this is. Luch is Lucifer. Luch is Lucifer. He's Mercury. He's Hermes. He's Thoth. He is representing the Hermes Trismegistus type wisdom that James 3:16 tells you is demonic. And as it's demonic, and the protectors of the Tuatha Dé, of which Luch was one of them, the protectors of that, the leprechauns, or even if you take the different entities from the Banshee and all of this, right? They are protectors that are demonic. They're demonic. Now, there's no other way of putting it. Whenever you go down to Onagat, the gates of hell in Roscommon, and I done a video there. Um, And in Roscommon, you have a hawthorn bush, which is a fairy bush. And like I said, we had to get like Disney and all of that made fairies something sweet and all of this. They're not. They're we. Let me tell you this. I'm going to go off on a tangent. My wife and I were out walking today, and we went to an art exhibition because we're just that smooth and sophisticated. Um, Actually, that's not true. I gurned the whole way around because I was stuck. But we went to this exhibition because it was open, and we just went in. And it was an art exhibition of George Russell, who's an Irish painter who is a mystic. So this is in the local museum, and he was painting about the Tuatha, and he was painting about the She, and he was painting on one of the paintings was called "The Stolen Child" because the She were also shapeshifters, and they would steal children and replace them with demons. This is an Irish culture, and you get things like Disney. I can hear all the drums going. You get things like Disney and stuff, trying to make a fairy and all of that, all nice and cute and all of this stuff. Not nice and cute. They would have stolen children. They would have taken children away and replaced it with a demon in its place, a shapeshifter in its place. And all of this is right out of what we know in demonology as the demonic, as evil, as all embraced around Luciferianism or luck worship. And like I said, you see it even with Crom Dove. That Crom Dove is Luch and Luch is Crom Dove. And the Crom Dove Sunday is Lunasa, the worship of Luch, and that's also the time in which there was the trading of souls. All of this is saying this like when we take the St. Patrick story, when we take Meowen Suchat, his real name, when we take that story, what we see is the story of someone who was humble to obey the call in his life, to have a vision and to go against the place of his captivity when he was 16, to go against that, to go back to there. I'm not being funny, but at 60, you'd have to be fully convinced of your walk with God to uproot everything and to go back to the place that you were held slave. And then to stand against the pagan culture that you, who's now done your monastic priestly training, has understood that in that training, they're worshipping the Hasatan. They're worshipping the light bearer. They're worshipping, and everything is set up because it's the Nephilistic news cycle has brought it here, and they're worshipping the demonic. And he comes in and he goes about the place and he baptizes them. He chases the demonic, the serpents. He fights against chaos, or he represents fighting against chaos, as his picture of good triumphing over evil in the book of Revelation. And he stands as the witness to the true victory of Christ. And who is he called by? Victoricus. He's called by him to come here. I think it's an amazing story, and I've probably talked way too long. So, guys, I have a little bit of an issue in terms of my wife took my phone to the gym, so I've got her phone, so I can't access Discord. So, what I can do is if you have put question in, I should be able to find it really quickly. Um, if you have any questions, um, please throw them up. If there are problems with the questions, was there an issue with questions there, or am I missing this? Um, Maybe I won't be able to access them. Yeah, honestly, so you've got something common from us as well. We are going to be, my wife and I will be working on a documentary over the next few months. We will have people on it like Vicky Joy Anderson, Karen Wilkinson, Pete Garcia, Kurt Reid, Lee Brainard. We'll have a lot of people on it talking, but one of the things that Kelly and I are going to do is we're going to go around some of the major megalithic sites, not just in Ireland, but we're going to go over to England and do some as well. And we're going to look at them and we're going to tell you in terms of what the agenda and the strategy is in terms of spiritual warfare, because I believe the spiritual warfare is increasing magnificent. I can't speak tonight. It's increasing to teach the Trinity concept. Um, it's a theory that he did. It's and I'm back. Okay, it's a theory. Am I back on? Give me 2 seconds. Am I back here? Yeah, I'm back. It's a theory that he did use uh, the three leaf clover to try and show you the Trinity, same way that Saint Boniface did with the Christmas tree. So you know, in Germany, that the Christmas tree would have been hung initially upside down. Okay, because St. Boniface came along and he pointed out and he took the three corners of the tree, the two base corners and the apex corner, to point out and describe the Trinity. The theory is that St. Patrick used the three leaf clover to determine that, to sort of teach that. I don't have a problem with it. I see no evidence to suggest that he did not um, use it. And certainly, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he had influence on previously pagan, I guess, pagan grasps on things. Certainly there's a belief that, let me just flick this around so I can see what people are saying. Certainly there is a belief that he had a friendship with St. Bridget. And there's a little bit of confusion over that as well, because there's St. Bridget, but there's also the ancient Irish goddess Bridget. They're not the same. Okay. But then that's where you get St. Bridget's Cross from, which I personally believe St. Bridget's Cross has been adopted into um, or sort of has incorporated some of the pagan side of Bridget the goddess. And I don't know why I went down that road, but I did. Right. So, Caterlin, if you see any questions, can you maybe, let me see if I tried here. Oh, they're coming up now. Praise God. Um, should I name my, Bubba's asked, should I name my, rename my kitty cat? I named her Lucky years ago. I figured that she's lucky to be in my home. Luck is not, I know it sounds like I'm saying luck. It's Lugh. It's not luck, right? It literally is Irish for light. Um, so, no. Keep your cat named whatever it is. Although I personally don't believe in luck. But yeah, don't keep your cat's name the way it is. Uh, there seems to be, so Diana says there seems to be a parallel of this and Star Trek and Star Wars alien ideologies. Thoughts? Well, they're definitely. I'm not a bit like, I don't know Star Trek. I know a bit of Star Wars. I'm not a big sci-fi guy, but in fairness, the alien ideology and certainly UFO beliefs, yes. Um, so even modern day New Agers are very much intrinsically linked with ancient alien theory. Um, and that's where, if you look at this, right, so the real Genesis 6 story is fallen watchers, Shemi Azazel. This is in the book of Enoch as well. Shemi Azazel, fallen watchers fall on Mount Hermon. They make an oath to mate with the daughters of men and to corrupt humanity and to corrupt the seed. This is the seed war at play. However, the counter to that is the story of the Anunnaki. And the Mesopotamian story, and when we talk about the Anunnaki, which are the fallen watchers, in modern day culture, they've been adopted, they've been sort of been linked with a different planet and inhabiting a different planet and common here and all of this. There is a link in the sense of, like I say, the Nephilistic news cycle. They try and tell the story from a different perspective, from a fallen perspective. For instance, Ireland, like I said, has a book of invasions, and in the book of invasions, they have the God tribe, the Tuatha, coming to Ireland on ships, but the ships were not in water. They believed they floated in on the air. Okay, now I have no problem with that because I see them as watchers. And even if we take the apocryphal book, the Book of Enoch, we know that the Watchers were not just like these floaty about angels things. The Watchers were fierce creatures. You have that they were assigned to the fifth heaven in the Book of Enoch, and then they fell to the second heaven. Those who disobeyed their status and left their first abode, as Jude points it out, they fell to the second heaven, and that makes sense because the second heaven, according to the three heavens that Paul talks about, second heaven is attributed to Hasatan or Lucifer. It's attributed to the spirit of the air. So I think there is a connection there. It's just in terms they're sticking with the fallen perspective rather than the true perspective of the Bible. Excuse me. Have you been to to visit the memorial the Irish set up to recognise the American Choctaw Indians' contribution to Ireland during the Great Famine in the 1800s? I have not. Um, Now, I've done an awful lot of megalithic sites, and yes, we all, I think, everybody over here growing up studied. Well, it wasn't one Irish famine. There was at least three potato blights, but it was it was devastating to the country, and as it was devastating to the country, that's when you got the mass exodus. That's why you go anywhere now and you can say you talk to someone, they say, "Oh yeah, I'm Irish too because my granda or granny or whatever." It's because of things like the mass expulsion or exodus from Ireland following the potato blight. But no, I haven't. I haven't been to it. Um, oh, something's disappeared. Right. Oh no, they're back. Sorry, I think it's the Wi-Fi is acting up a little bit. Um, Let me see. Very good. Yeah, it's true. Our Whisperer said the devil can't conquer God's children, so division and strife is his only option. That's it. So James 3 tells you that where strife is or discord, um, or the Greek deity Eros is found. It says that every evil work is there. Now that's interesting because Eros was also seen as a throne deity that flew around the throne of Zeus. And Zeus, Revelation 2, the archaeological point of where his throne is situated is the temple of the throne of Lucifer is situated is the temple of Zeus. So that would make sense that what he does is he sends out strife. When he sends out strife, he gets access. Um, Let me see, where are we? I can see that I think I can't see many questions here. Oh, that's a good question. Was Mary worship a trade form priestess worship? Yes. So Mary worship can be, in my opinion, traced back through the Queen of Heaven lineage, right? So certainly within Catholicism, Mary is seen as the Queen of Heaven, and she was associated as the Queen of Heaven. But the Queen of Heaven title can be traced right back to the time frame of Genesis 11. So Genesis 11, you have Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz, their child. So Semiramis was also the mother and the lover of Nimrod and the mother of Tammuz. And Semiramis, according to Babylonian culture, gets deified, as does Nimrod. So Nimrod is seen as something extra than man. This is kind of like the Golden Age idea. So the Golden Age idea is that there were these kings. Certainly, it's associated with the myth of Atlantis or the Plato's teachings on Atlantis. But around Genesis 11, Nimrod was associated as being different than man, to being something else. In other words, in some way, some shape, or some form, he became of giant stature, and he was deified, as was Semiramis. Now, Semiramis was then called the Queen of Heaven, something that was later ascribed to many different deities, but they were all sort of, it's kind of from the Genesis 11 encounter, because what happens off the back of the Tower of Babel is God interrupts all their language. God uh, confuses all of their languages. So now the same narrative continues. So you have Astarte or Ishtar, and they are all identified as Queen of Heaven. You have Hathor, the Egyptian deity, identified as the Queen of Heaven. Hathor is also the same deity at Brunaboyne in Ireland, right? So Hathor was called the Queen of Heaven, and you'll see this, right? Let me just draw this for you. You'll see this sort of symbology that the Queen of Heaven was often associated. Can you see that? I don't know if my light's quite. So you would have this picture, and then you would have like a half crescent moon on top of the head that would give the symbology of horns, that would give the idea that you had this sort of crown. So the Queen of Heaven was associated with Hathor, was associated with Semiramis, Astarte, Ishtar, and then this crown in Irish history is also associated with Boyne, the 5,200-year-old megalithic site in called Newgrange in English, Brunaboyne in Irish, and the goddess of that was Boyne, who was also Hathor. They were associated as this Queen of Heaven, also synonymous with the galaxy, the Milky Way. Right? I'll not go down that rabbit hole, but they're connected. Mary was put in that same place. So Mary was deified under the Roman Catholics, not as a case of initially trying, I don't believe it, initially trying to disrupt the scripture, but rather trying to, um, I guess, convince a pagan society of the legitimacy of Christianity. And so they deified Mary. And when they deified Mary, they put her in this place as the Queen of Heaven. That Jeremiah talks about that there is no Queen of Heaven, but puts her in this place as the Queen of Heaven, the same as Semiramis, the same as Astarte, and so on. Now, this is also one of the symbolic connections that we get with the dispensation of Thyatira. So in Revelation chapter 3, you have the evil, wicked church, the church of wickedness, Thyatira. Thyatira was geographically the place called Semiramis. So it was called Semiramis, Queen of Heaven, Thyatira, wickedness, and what we have dispensationally is the age of the universal church, the Roman Catholic Church. Does that make sense? Um, Hope it does. So yeah, 100%. That's a fact. What is Zeus's name biblically? I have sixth grade students learning about this now. Now, God bless you. Right. So Zeus was the Grecian deity associated with lightning bolts. In terms of biblically, you would have to do the etymological study of what he represents. And the way this is done is the connection through the Roman counterpart. So Rome has the same deities as Greece. Greece have their names. Rome tend to identify them under different names, and the majority of the big ones they identify under the planetary system. So Zeus is identified as Jupiter in the Roman system. If we go back etymologically and look at the ages in different cultures, we can see the connection here. So if you go back to Babylon, in Babylon at the time of Nimrod, you had a pantheon. Just before Nimrod, you had a pantheon. So you had this pantheistic society where they worshipped so many different fallen deities, right? You had Tiamat, the chaos entity. And then this guy Marduk comes on the scene, conquests, beats up Tiamat, and brings order out of chaos. Now, no one brought order out of chaos, only God. And it's done in Genesis verse 2 when he sees uh, the waters are void, right? And the Holy Spirit hovers over the waters. The Hebrew words are tohu bohu. And it later, in I think Isaiah 45, it identifies that again, that God did not make the waters tohu bohu, but he brought order out of chaos. Tohu bohu describes a time of chaos. So he brings order out of the chaos. Marduk does a psyop, right? And he tries to replace himself in the place of God. So he says that he brought order out of chaos. And Marduk would have been the deity that Nimrod would have worshipped. And this would have been the deity that Abraham's father would have been a priest to, right? One of the main deities, right? So in that term, Marduk was also associated with a planet. He was associated with Jupiter. So if Marduk is Jupiter, if Zeus is Jupiter, then you can see that Zeus is Marduk, and then you can start to put things together. And then if you take Revelation chapter 2, verse 13, and the church of Pergamum, the church that is compromised, and Jesus gives them a warning. He says, I know your works. The Greek there is oida. It means he knows intimately what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I know that you're there where the throne of Satan is. And like I said, the geographical place for that is identified as the Temple of Zeus. So, in terms of Zeus, who is the god in Grecian terms of the lightning bolt, and uh, in Luke 10:18, Jesus says, I saw Satan fall like lightning. I believe that Zeus is the Grecian equivalent to Lucifer or Satan or Hasatan, the same way Luch is the equivalent. The same way, do you understand? There's so a lot of certainly a lot of the pantheistic reasoning is they give different names to attributes or characteristics of deities, of what we would call fallen angels or fallen Beneha Elohim. Hopefully, yeah, Jeremiah 44 talks about the Queen of Heaven. Thank you. Hopefully that makes sense. So, have I answered all of the questions, or is there any more? I can wait a second. My wife's not back from the gym, so she went to the gym while I did this. So I'm expecting her to come back with big, massive guns in her arms. So hopefully, um, I would love to visit Ireland. I lost that there. What did that? I didn't realize. Somebody was saying they'd love to visit Ireland. It's a lovely place to be. It is. Um, yeah. So what you'll see, certainly, like I think it's not by mistake that we see things like I can't even remember what it's called. Like kids programs, and they're sort of bringing and talking about the Greek deities and all of this, and it's not by mistake that that's becoming more and more popular, and it's becoming more and more popular because it's trying to push Christianity to the side. I'll share this with you quickly. Um, so in the book Guardians at the Gate, I talk about Onagat, and I talk about something that I believe happened physically that represents something spiritually. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 46 says, first in the natural, then in the spiritual. So, one of the things that happened in Onagat, the gates of hell in Ireland, the birthplace of Samhain, Halloween, was that in the mid 20th century, the gates which were previously put up by the church that sort of shielded the place were removed. Now, I personally think that that's a physical reflection of something spiritual that followed. The gates in the mid 20th century, the gates of hell were removed, so now it's an open cave. And I believe that that's something that we're seeing spiritually happen right now, where they're seeing this resurgence in New Ageism. Christianity, certainly over here, has kind of been ostracized politically, pushed to the corner, seen as the I guess bad guy, and being replaced by New Ageism in the mainstream. Why? I think probably within Ireland, because it was always the one that was blamed for the civil war here, for the troubles. Um, it's not true. It's not. It wasn't about religion. It was about a lot of more things. But religion was the easy excuse. So I think it's been pushed to the side here, and I think that the connection with the timing of the 20th century and the connection with the timing of the removal of the gates from the gates of hell. And then you started to see what the world not just adopt Halloween, but like go full on for Halloween. And it's now the second biggest um, holiday, certainly in the West. It's the second biggest holiday to Christmas. Um, would you put this in a book for us with pictures? I'm a visual person, so much packed in the stream. Um, Yeah, do you know what? That's not a bad idea. I can't do it right now, but actually my son and my daughter are actually fantastic artists. You saw the height of my artistry. I just drew something for you there, remember? I can't draw to save my life, but that would be great for them to actually I get the visual aspects of it. Um, there's certainly it's understanding the culture, and it's understanding that look, we look at Israel, and Israel is the central piece, and certainly Jerusalem is the central time clock and timepiece for everything prophetically. But Israel were also called and set apart for God. And what happened when Israel were called and set apart for God? I believe that the enemy looked to build strongholds all the way across the world, and certainly for Ireland, Ireland was a major stronghold. And I think that the potato blights, the potato famines certainly gave uh, the enemy a chance to spread his ideology to some degree, in terms of Samhain, in terms of occultism, in terms of like, the amount of spiritualism. Now, I love, and I'm very proud of my country, uh, I love my country, but at the same time, the amount of spiritualism here, as in seeing psychics and all of that, is through the roof and has been for as long as I've been alive. Um, it's ingrained in the culture. So I think that yeah, definitely a book like that would be good. I think the first thing that we're doing, and you need to pray for us, by the way, because we have been experiencing an awful lot of not just spiritual warfare. Well, it is spiritual warfare, but spiritual warfare manifesting in the physical, where it's been probably in the last week or so, it's been quite heavy, quite extreme, would be the only way of putting it. And I believe that this is connected to our plan of what we're doing. Um, so one of the things that we're going to be doing is Kelly and I will be videoing from a Mithraic temple. So do we all know who Mithras is? Um, you can hit one if you know who Mithras is. Hit two if you don't. So it comes from Zoroastrianism, but he was also the counterpart of certainly the Roman military, their answer to countering Jesus and countering the Christian movement. But there's a Mithraic temple at Hadrian's Wall, and we're going to go on video there, um, and kind of focus in on that and focus in on the spiritual element of it. Question: was most of the fighting in Ireland Protestant against Catholic? Um, yeah, but you wouldn't really term it as that. You would term it as loyalist against nationalist, or loyalist against Republican. So that's the way it kind of would have worked. So Republican were those who wanted to be part of the Irish Republic, as in, so you've got Northern Ireland where we are, and the south of Ireland. You had the majority of what you saw, as in terms of the troubles, that's the north, that's where we were. We are, sorry. Um, we were brought up in it. I was showing the guys when they were over. So when we had Troy, Pete, Lee, Kurt, and their other halves all over, we were taking them into town, and I was telling them that when I was born, and when I was a kid, you go into town, and there were barricades. So there were police barricades. You couldn't just walk into your town centre. You had to go through a turnstile. You had to be searched. There was barbed wire, soldiers in every corner, and that's the way we were brought up. But it was not. I don't think it was scary, even though everybody I know lost someone, or if they didn't lose someone, they knew someone who was affected by the troubles. But it was loyalists versus nationalists. So those who were loyal to um, the crown, to Britain, those who were of the Protestant faith, um, and then those who were of the Catholic faith tended to be of the other persuasion, and wanted. And so it was. So what I'm saying is the religion was the poster, but what behind it was a political ideal as opposed to the religious faith, because a lot of the individuals involved did not actually have any relationship with Jesus in any way. So it wasn't really a religion. It was the the culture that they were brought up in. Um, and you see that certainly to this day. I had a guy before, um, when I was teaching martial arts, and he was a parent, and he came up to me and he handed me a DVD, and he says, "It's why the Pope is the Antichrist." And I went, "Oh, great! You believe in God?" "Oh no, I don't believe in God." "What you? So you're not a Christian?" "Oh no, I don't believe in the Bible. Don't believe in Jesus. Don't believe in any of that." And I says, "So how's the Pope the Antichrist?" He says, "Because he is." So it was just basically the way he was thinking. And I said, "But you can't believe in the Antichrist if you don't believe in Christ." And he says, "Well, I can. I'm a Protestant." And I says, "No, no, no, you're not a Protestant." He says, "I am a Protestant." I says, "No, you're an atheist." He says, "I'm an atheist Protestant." And I was like, "How dumb can you be?" So, um, question: has Pastor Gary seen research of Don Koenig? No relation to Bill or William Koenig, just learned of Don Koenig's research, and he needs prayer health, but he's written on eschatology. I actually have not, but we'll, of course, keep him in prayer. But no, I haven't actually seen his stuff. The thing is I don't tend to. If I'm not busy, I flick on to Pete's whenever he's streaming, and or I flick on the Kurtz, or I flick on the Laser Troys, or sometimes if I'm lucky, I'll catch Bubba, and I'll try and catch people, but I don't always get a chance because um, one, there's time difference, and two, that like it's 8:30 at night here. Well, there's time difference, but also I've got 5 kids, I've got a job and a ministry to run, so I just don't. I wish I did. I just don't get the opportunity to watch a lot of things. Um, so, did we get something from tonight? Hopefully, you did. Hopefully, you know a little bit more about the. It's not normally taught. I'll be honest, because people don't like to look at the elements of the occult or the new age, and they don't want to associate with it. They either want to just completely shy away from it, or they just want to completely water down, the St. Patrick's involvement. But it's really a picture, like I said, of spiritual warfare. And there is my wife back. Were you watching me? Yeah. So, guys, did you get anything? Hopefully, you did. I can see comments coming through here. Um, Yeah, we will be on. Like I said, we'll be on tomorrow. I'll finish here. We'll be on tomorrow, 7 p.m. I should say this. I have kind of messed up my timing for Wednesday with John Holler. It will be about 6:05 GMT, 7:05. So I don't know what time that is in Central Standard Time. Maybe somebody could throw that up, but it's simply because our clocks don't change until the end of the month, and your clocks have already changed if you're watching in America. And I didn't actually catch on to that. So we are on tomorrow night with Bubba and Wednesday night with John. So, guys, God bless. I call you the head and not the tail, above and not beneath, kings, queens, and high priests in Jesus' mighty name. And remember, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Guys, God bless.